Hello, everyone, and welcome to this press conference for Amazon's Night Sky. I'm Dave Cargier from Turner Classic Movies. I've been asked to help guide us all through this event today, which is absolutely my pleasure to do. I have the questions that many of you have submitted from around the world. I have one or two of my own, so I'll get right to it. But first, let me introduce our four special guests. First of all, from the cast, Sissy Spacek. Hello there.
Hello.
J.K. Simmons is here. Hello, J.K.
Hello.
Great to see you. We also have with us the writer and executive producer of the show, Holden Miller. Hello, Holden.
Hey.
And showrunner and executive producer, Daniel Connolly is here too. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, David.
Great to see you all. Let me start off, Sissy, with a quick question for you. Had you and J.K. Simmons met before this job?
No, we hadn't, had we?
We had not.
Nope.
That's crazy. J.K., what was the first meeting like? Do you remember where and when?
Yes, it was on the phone. I was in my car somewhere between Vegas and LA, and Sissy was on her ranch farm with her family of, I don't know, 4 or 5 generations of the Waltons that she hangs out with there. And, we ostensibly were, calling each other to talk about this job, but we mostly talked about our kids and our families and life, and then we decided to do this job together.
Sissy, was there something that kind of led you to believe, okay, this is going to be a good fit?
Well, it's always a leap of faith, but I just had such a great time. We called each other back. We talked for a while, and then I think you got another call, and then you called back. It was kind of an instantaneous thing. We've been married for half a century, so.
Yeah, we have a little catching up to do.
All right. Listen, it totally comes through on the show to me, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit because there's some questions about that from some of the journalists. Here's a question from Germany, from Miguel said. This one's for you, Holden. How did you come up with the premise of the story, and what is the story ultimately about for you?
Yeah, well, I think I can answer both of those with one answer. Is that I wish I could say that there was some aha moment where I was out walking at night and saw my neighbor sneaking into his shed, and it all came to me. But really, the story started. I wrote the pilot about over 5 years ago now, and it was a time when I was spending a lot of time with my grandparents, and they were at that point getting into their 80s, approaching their 65th wedding anniversary, and I was spending a lot of time with them and just really observing how time and aging had affected their relationship, and seeing them go through that, and it just really made me want to tell this story about a marriage, about enduring love, about mortality, and it felt like a really small story, which I hope comes through on the screen in some ways, but also there's this epicness, this grandeur to their tale, and that was really where the sci-fi aspect of the show came from, where the idea for this chamber as a way to kind of make literal within the story these epic emotions and questions that these characters are grappling with.
Daniel, from your point of view, when you read it, talked to Holden, what most grabbed your attention and interest?
Well, it's I've never worked with another writer before. I've always sort of been my own kind of entity in this business in terms of developing material and selling it. Obviously, I've worked on other shows, but so the bar was very high for me personally to want to, sort of join with a writer who's just emerging and to try to take that material and sell it somewhere and get it. It's a very long shot. And the odds are obviously against you. But when Legendary told me about it, and when I actually read it, it was one of those rare pieces of material that I knew within 3 pages, like that this is something very special here. And there was a sort of meeting of sensibilities in terms of I think I can help this project get made and make it good. And it's rare to ever read something, well, for myself, where I'm jealous and wish I had written that. And that was certainly the case here. And so, it was the beginning of a 3+ year journey for Holden and I to work together, figure out what this show really was about, and expand it out and build it out and to sell it. And then, there was all these iterative steps of, okay, write another script, put a room together, write the rest of the scripts, cast it, so there were all these steps that had to happen. And, as having done this for a while now, it's so rare for all those stars to line up. And with this one, I had an inkling that it would, and it was a good bet.
I love it. Here's a similar question for you, Sissy and JK. So Sissy, I'll have you answer it first, and then JK. From Sweden, Jonathan Blomberg wants to know, what parts in particular drew you into this project? The sci-fi elements or the drama about loss, aging, and love, or was it the combination?
Well, it was obviously the combination, but the first thing that grabbed me was the relationship that I have with this man, this 50-year relationship. And it felt like it really grounded the story. And so, yeah, that's what it was for me.
And Sissy, how much did you read before saying yes?
God, how much did you guys send me? I read a lot.
We were in
The whole thing.
There was?
We had all the scripts were written before we started production, which is very rare, and it really helped get these two actors of this caliber to sign on to the show, because it was all there to see, and it helped us focus on production more when we actually started, because everything was written. And obviously there are changes that are made as you go into production and even on a daily basis, but having it all out there and written, it was a proof of concept that was hopefully compelling.
JK, did you need to read all? Oh, yeah.
Exciting to have to get to see everything.
I'm sure it is.
Prayer, Dan.
Did you read all 8, JK, or did you just need?
No, I think some of those 19 middlemen must have stepped in before I got scripts, because I got 3, I think, before I was to make my decision. But again, not unlike Dan said, it was apparent very quickly that early on in whatever sort of the first act, I guess, of the first episode, that these characters and this relationship were really well created and delineated, and then learning, sort of what a labor of love it was initially for Holden, and continues to be. And I think, most of us, whether we are of the Medicare generation or thinking back to our own childhood, there's a real exceptional beauty in that, the long-lasting relationships in life. Like I was blessed with our parents. My parents celebrated their 61st wedding anniversary, and those kinds of enduring relationships, especially given what this relationship, as we learn during the course of the 8 episodes and will not spoil, has endured and will continue to be tested by.
Holden, what was the reaction from your grandparents when they learned that you were basically writing a show that was inspired by them?
Yeah, well, the characters of Franklin and Irene ended up very different from them once they were on the page. Beyond also the lack of a space portal in their backyard, but they were very excited when they learned about the show. But sadly, that they're both no longer with us at this point. But I miss them, and they were a huge influence on my life. So treasure their memory always.
That's beautiful. Here's a question for you, Daniel, from Brazil. Camila Souza wants to know, this series has 2 large groups of characters who live their journeys in parallel. Was it very challenging to mix these 2 parts of the story and explore them in a satisfying way?
It was not challenging, actually. It was it really brought this show to life in a way. And as beautiful as the Franklin and Irene story are in Illinois, we knew early on that the show needed more scope and sort of to open it up. And we were very excited actually about the opportunity to, in the second episode, open up this other storyline with a mother and daughter from Argentina who live in a very rural and harsh place, who we were going to set off on a journey that we knew would ultimately collide with the York storyline. So it wasn't challenging. I guess I could see why one might think it would be, but it was a great opportunity to present the audience with another point of view into the mythology of these chambers.
Mm. You know, in a great way, it reminded me of the movie Babel that I love so much, where you
Sure.
have kind of different and parallel stories all over the world, and ability for you to cast known performers, but also some new people. It's exciting for the audience as well. So I liked that. JK, here's a question for you from Brazil. Kaio Coletti asks, Franklin and Irene's couple dynamic is so important to the show. Did you and Ms. Spacek work beforehand to develop that chemistry? What kind of talks did you have on the set?
Yeah, we chatted for an hour and a half on the phone. And, I mean, it's one of those things that, no, we didn't really, we weren't like, workshopping it, or we did, she invited me over to her place in Chicago shortly after we landed. And we did have one, sort of nice relaxed lunch, but that was more just to sort of get acquainted and hang out and, establish that kind of comfort level together. It really was one of those things. And I've been in the business for a while. I know Sissy is somewhat new to it, but it's one of those things where, it's a couple of old pros and some really good material. And, we just kind of hit the ground running. And, of course, you're sort of finding your way along as you go. But that to me is, part of the joy of what we're fortunate to do for a living, is that, every day there are discoveries. And that was a big part of the fun.
I mean, Sissy, for me watching the show, I'm intrigued by all the different aspects of it and the different elements, but my favorite stuff is just when it's the two of you in the house in a quiet room. And it just reminds me of that tennis cliche when you're playing against someone who's really great or better than you, or equally as great as you. It raises your game. I felt like that was happening with both of you. Can you tell me what it's like to sit opposite JK and do some of these, really intimate?
Well, you feel safe. You feel safe, no matter what is called for in the scene, he's going to bring that and more. And he's a very present actor. And close your ears. He's a gracious actor and a generous actor. And we had a blast. A couple of times I think we wanted to kill each other, but that was usually in the scene, because but it's interesting because meeting someone and then like 2 days later you're working together, you're playing people who've been married 50 years. It's interesting, but we're actors. That's what we do.
Right.
So it was fun. And it was a very, very collaborative experience. With Holden and Dan were amazing. And we just worked on it and it unfolded. And a lot of times scenes would go places that surprised us. And it was really exciting.
I mean, I know you guys, we don't have to go all into the details, but I know that it was a situation where JK was brought on, relatively soon before the shooting. Daniel, was it ever a scary thing where you went, oh my God, like, is this all going to fall apart? How are we going to hold this all together? What was your mindset during that experience?
It's scary the whole way through, actually, but but it happens all the time. This is just the nature of people become available and unavailable. I'm not even sure JK was available when we first started to cast the show. He works a little bit. I don't know if you noticed that about JK. He's pretty busy. But no, it wasn't, because
Right.
I think, you know, having Sissy as the anchor, we knew we were going to be able to attract someone of a very high caliber, and we even exceeded that. So
That's great. Here's a question for both actors. This one's from Spain. Piedad Milicua asks, this series is rare because its two lead roles are older. How dare you? No. Do you think there is a lack of protagonists of your age in cinema and television? Sissy, you first.
Yes. Yes, except for JK, he works constantly. I think
How do you not get frustrated?
so, because probably maybe it's because this is TV, but oftentimes in films, you don't get the lead role. They're not written because younger people go to the movies and older people stay home and watch TV. Like Irene and Franklin, or they watch the universe.
JK, what's
I
your
would
opinion?
add, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead, please.
No, JK first.
Okay.
Well, just I think sure, yeah. I always like to see you know, my generation and you know, even older represented. And as far as the sort of television versus film thing, that to me is the beauty of this kind of second golden age of television that we find ourselves in now, where, you know, when you're working for a place like Amazon, it really is a wonderful hybrid in terms of the whole experience, really, between doing a television series in the old traditional network, you know, 24 episodes a year way, and doing a feature film, which is, you know, a much more sort of holistic, complete experience, you know, in a shorter amount of time. This to me is a really, from my perspective as an actor and also as an audience, a really satisfying hybrid of those two.
Yeah.
I was just going to add that I completely agree with Sissy and JK that there aren't enough roles, both in cinema and in television. But obviously, there's a lot of crossover now. It makes no sense to me personally. I just don't understand the thinking that people who are younger necessarily are not going to watch a compelling show that has people who are not young in it. But obviously our show has people who are multiple ages, and it's I think it's an artifact of a different generation that's advertising and demographic driven, and that the industry has evolved beyond that. And I certainly hope that there's you know, more mixing of genres and demographics in this new golden age of television, because it makes no sense. I know that young people are responding favorably to our show. So hopefully that'll change.
That's great. This is a question for all of you. So Holden, I'm going to have you answer it first, and then if the other three have something that they want to add, please do. This question is from Germany. Katja Engelhardt asks, as this sci-fi story focuses strongly on a marriage, can you elaborate on how far the sci-fi plot maybe even enhances the love story? Is it a vehicle in a sense?
Yeah. Well, the short answer is yes. I think that, you know, we always wanted the sci-fi to be feeding the relationship aspects, and then the relationship aspects to be feeding the science fiction of it. I think when we see Franklin and Irene early in the series up in that observation room for the first time, well, not the first time for them, but seeing them look out that window, you know, there is a obviously incredibly fantastic and science fictional aspect to it, and this is incredible planetscape. But at the same time, we see that they're using it almost as a living room to sit in their easy chairs while Franklin reads a book and Irene enjoys a cup of tea. And I think that starting from that point, hopefully that is as clear a demonstration of the mix that we were going for throughout the series. And I think as episodes go on, you really see how the questions surrounding their relationship and the questions surrounding the chamber sort of enhance each other. And I think that's true for all of the characters in the show as well.
Sissy, what's your feeling on that?
What was the question again?
Well, just kind of
Taken away by your answer.
How the sci-fi enhances the love story
I think that it's difficult for them. I think that it complicates their lives because they experience such a tragic loss midway through their marriage. And then they discover this thing in their backyard at almost simultaneously. And I think it's part of the human condition to wonder what's out there. But then to have these two things kind of intertwined, I think it was a little bit of torture and torment, because they were waiting to find out what it means so they can move forward in their lives. And I think because they found it, they have to keep it secret. They're more isolated. They've withdrawn from their community involvement to an enormous degree. And as time goes by, they feel differently about. I don't want to speak for you, JK, but she wants to just be taken up to the heavens. And I think he just would love to have his partner back. And, so that's a real, I have had a long relationship of about half a century, and I'm glad we have just mundane things to deal with, not outer space. So
yeah, my relationship is a mere 31 years at this point. But one of the things that I approach this differently and differently than I kind of wish audiences would be able to have, and some will, the experience that I had in having this story unfold for me over the first episode, because I never read breakdowns or synopses or log lines or anything. I always just start on page one of the script and read the story. So the way our first episode unfolds, there are well, the way the whole season unfolds, but even just in the first episode, there are surprises and kind of a jaw dropper that I did not see coming at all. I was completely invested in a story that I thought was going to be a domestic drama, with some sort of fun comedic elements about this old couple in rural Illinois, which, as we've all said, at its heart, it really kind of is. But yeah, I always encourage people to watch the show, but I'm not a big fan of trailers.
Right. One thing, quick question for both of you, Sissy and JK, is that just kind of occurred to me. I'm assuming you've watched some or all of the episodes. I know you're both pretty busy. I mean, Sissy, in contrast to Coal Miner's Daughter, where you were Loretta Lynn at all these different ages, and it was just like mind-blowingly convincing. Here you are in this show where you have these other two actors playing you. What's it like to see another actor playing another version of you on screen? Maybe that's happened a bunch of times to you before, but particularly the actress who plays your character, Sissy, the resemblance is amazing. What's that experience like?
She did a great job. I was fascinated by them, and I thought that the way Holden and Dan approached the flashbacks, it really felt like it was, there wasn't a lot of information set up for it. You just were there. You were here and there, and it's, and so it's like they were making this for an intelligent audience, and I appreciated that. And I watched the whole show, the entire show, all in one day. And it just flew by. I was so caught up in it. I loved the relationship between our couple. And it's also, there's so many stories going on that it really is invigorating. It's an invigorating story. I'd had concern about the sci-fi part because I thought, how can I, what do I have to compare that with? I have no experience except flying in an airplane, which didn't really help much. But it was grounded in reality. It was grounded in the human experience, and then we just got to experience it. We had a wonderful production designer, and he built these kind of bizarre things, and we were just being, Franklin and Irene in an extraordinary experience. But I was swept away. I really was swept away. I was so relieved and excited.
JK, what was your reaction to the younger actor and everything that Sissy just said?
Well, it was, I mean, I've done it a few times. I think most recently in my wife's film, I'm Not Here, where there was a 30-year-old version of me played by, or 20 something to 30, played by Sebastian Stan. And then there was a 6-year-old version of me, or 5-year-old version of me, I think, played by young Sheldon, Ian, who became young Sheldon shortly after that. And that was, I think, the first time in my experience, or the most significant time that there were, 3 different actors developing the same character and the same story. In our show, where we see the flashback to young Franklin and Irene, beginning as, at 20-ish and going through, I'm always so loath to give away any spoilers, but yes, there's a couple of younger actors who are almost as good looking as Sissy and myself, who play us from roughly 20 to later than that, and then at a certain point we take over, and it always is a challenge, I think, for all 4 of the actors, and I think particularly for the younger actors, who are realizing, these are faces that have been around for a while, and that the audiences are going to have a certain attachment to, and hopefully affection for, and that they are the ones really that have, I think, the harder task, and I think they did it really well.
Yeah.
Okay, with a couple of minutes I have left, here's a fun question. Maybe you all can answer real quick, and I want all 4 of you to answer. From Sweden, Eric Diedrichs wants to know, if you were given the opportunity to open the mysterious door, would you do it, or would you keep it shut? Holden.
Well, geez. Well, you think not knowing what's on the other side, you'd certainly be tempted to open it up. I think that I think honestly, probably not, but I'm glad that Franklin and Irene did.
Sir. Daniel.
Yes, I would.
JK.
No spoilers. No, I would go back to the house and watch the ball game.
Sissy.
Would I take my whole family?
Yes. We'll allow it.
Okay, I'd go.
Even if they don't want to go.
Yeah, you drag them.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're not going.
Congratulations to you all on this beautiful show.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks to all of you for the questions and for your time, and we'll see you soon. So now I need to get an all clear.